line. And if you give we a liquor, that is merely a hiccup. Look, you win the little battle, you lose the war. It's the same result every time. Everybody sing. Here come the West Indies. Here come the West Indies. Them rude boys gonna get you by degrees. Here come the West Indies. I'll tell you now. Here come the West Indies. Here come the West Indies. Them bad boys gonna bring you to your knees. Here come the West Indies. Special request to the Trinity posse. And what about the Guyana posse? And what about the Jamaica posse?
Against England, a riot erupted. An outraged crowd believed that a controversial run-out showed the umpires were favouring the old colonial masters. A month after the riot, West Indian writer C.L.R. James published an open appeal for Frank Worrell to be instated as captain.
Frank Worrell is at the peak of his reputation, not only as a cricketer, but as a master of the game. Respect for him has never been higher in all his long and brilliant career.
The authorities finally relented, and Worrell was appointed captain for the West Indies tour to Australia in November 1960.
That was really a great turning point. You know, now we can be all selected on merit. And yes, we accept that there are going to be batsmen or bowlers from each ethnic origin coming in. And that would help us to be stronger as a team and a unit.
Leading his team off the plane in Australia, Worrell was fulfilling a dream for black West Indians begun by Leary Constantine. For the first time, their cricket team would be chosen on ability alone. Worrell assembled a young side featuring batsman Conrad Hunt and Rohan Kanhai, and fast bowler Wes Hall. He wanted it to represent the Federation's new spirit of unity, and even included former captain Jerry Alexander. Also on their tour was a brilliant young all-rounder from Barbados. Gary Sobers had already hit the headlines 2 years earlier when he broke Len Hutton's record test match score. His 365 not out against Pakistan was the first test century this 21-year-old had scored.
And when I got to 364, I just pushed the ball in the covers, and before you look up, Clyde Walcott was down on me. I took off and ran down the other end, and the record was broken. The crowd was so overjoyed, and for about half an hour they were out there lifting me up and cheering.
With Sobers now established in the team, the West Indies travelled to Brisbane for the first test against Australia. It was Worrell's first match as captain, and the result would become part of cricket folklore.
The team captains Richie Benaud of Australia and Frank Worrell of the West Indies tossed before the start of the first test match.
Worrell won the toss and chose to bat first, but Australia struck early and the West Indies slumped to 65 for 3.
Kanhai caught grout, bowled Davidson for 15.
When Worrell walked out to join Sobers in the middle, he knew the course of the match now hung in the balance. The pressure was on the captain.
Play resumes with Benaud bowling his first over, and Sobers welcomes him with typical aggression. This sizzling straight drive takes the score past the 100.
Worrell, playing a captain's knot, is restraining his natural aggression.
With their backs to the wall, Sobers scored 132, and Worrell played a captain's innings with 65. Together they had pulled the West Indies back into contention.
It's a full toss, and McDonald bangs it through for another 4 runs.
But the Australians replied strongly, and as the two sides both looked for the win, little separated the teams after almost 5 days of stylish and attacking cricket. The game was poised for a dramatic finish, with Australia needing 5 runs off the last 7 balls of the match, with Richie Benaud facing Wes Hall.
Wes was ripping in. It took about 8 minutes to bowl the last over. They were 8-ball overs in those days. And Frank Worrell had given Wes strict instructions not to bowl a bouncer to me because I was a reasonable hooker, but not this day because he did bowl a bouncer, and I got a top edge, and thought it for a moment it was going to fly over Alexander's head, but it didn't.
Benno's next and he's out. Caught by Alexander. The 8th Australian wicket has fallen and either side can still win the match.
With the next 3 balls, Australia scrambled 2 more runs as they chased victory. Wes Hall missed a run out and then a catch.
The 5th ball. Grout swings, the ball goes high in the air. Hall races across and he drops the ball. The 6th ball. Metcalf connects and the ball flies deep in the outfield. They complete a 2nd run. The scores are level. The 3rd run will win the match.
Mecco full slogged Wes to deep mid-wicket. Conrad Hunt chased it. The groundsman there had apologised to me earlier. He said, oh, there's something wrong with the mower. I haven't been able to cut the clover. And this thing stopped in the clover a couple of yards from the boundary. Conrad Hunt picked it up and they're going for the winning run. And the throw had to be within an inch of the stumps. Otherwise, Wally Grout would have been okay.
Grout makes a great effort, but the bails go off and he's run out.
With the scores now tied and pressure mounting, Worrell had some advice for Wes Hall.
When Frank Worrell went to him and says, the only thing I have to tell you is if you bowl a no ball, you know what would happen. You will not be able to go back to the West Indies.
Hall bowling the 7th ball to Klein.
And that is when Wes Hall said, and he planted his foot about 4 feet behind the crease to make sure that there wasn't a malignant umpire out there. And when he bowled it to Joe Solomon at square leg, we thought it was all over because square leg is the hardest place in the world to hit wickets from because all you can see is one stem.
And here's the single that wins the match.
And for Joe Solomon to hit that one stump was absolutely remarkable, knowing that the batsman was going to run under all circumstances.
This was the first tied test in the history of the game, and it set the tone for an enthralling series. Despite eventually losing the series 2-1, Frank Worrell was hailed by the Australian press as an inspirational leader and applauded for the exciting brand of cricket his team played. The campaign to appoint Worrell had been vindicated.
And we drove through the streets of Melbourne, thousands of people. People don't want us to leave. West Indies cricket start to rise from 1960.
Back home, they were hailed as national heroes. There was now optimism in Caribbean society that with the cricket team and the Federation, the West Indies could look to the future as a single independent nation.
This was the scene at Palisadoes Airport as a crowd of over 2,000 people awaited the return from Australia of 4 of the Jamaican members of the West Indies Test side. The people of Kingston, and indeed of all Jamaica, wanted to applaud these sporting representatives of the Federation.
But after only 3 years, cracks began to appear in the unity of the Federation. Jamaica and Trinidad wanted a greater share of the political power, which they argued reflected their greater economic contribution. These differences threatened to undermine the Union. In 1962, the Federation officially collapsed. And later that year, Jamaica and Trinidad were granted full independence of their own. Leading the West Indies to England in 1963, Worrell knew that his team were now the only ambassadors for West Indian people. Cricket, more than ever, would have to represent the West Indies. Worrell kept the core of the team that had taught Australia, but he also added Charlie Griffith, who, with Wes Hall, would form a fearsome opening bowling attack. Together, they began the West Indies' reputation for aggressive pace bowling.
When Cowdrey was at 19, another blow for England, and for poor Cowdrey himself, struck on the forearm.
The West Indies outclassed England, winning the series 3-1.
The end of Stewart, caught by Solomon off ball.
And in the final test at the Oval, West Indian fans raced onto the pitch to greet their heroes.
The Oval can never have known a scene like this. Victory in the series by 3 matches to 1 confirmed the West Indies as the most powerful side in the world.
After the tour, Frank Worrell retired, and the captaincy was taken over by his young protege, Gary Sobers.
King Cricket, Garfield Sobers is his name. King Cricket, Sobers is his name.
Good evening and welcome to today's edition of West Indies Cricket 101. Wherever you're joining us from on this Sunday evening, welcome to our discussion. My two spin twins. No, it will have to be a triumvirate. We never had 3 spinners at any time. There was Ramdil and Valentine, and then that was it. Whenever we've had spinners, they've hunted one. But Trinidad, as you remember back in the 70s, had a 4-prong spin attack. You remember Inshan Ali, Imtiaz Ali, Rafiq Jumadeen, and Ranji Nanan, 4-prong spin attack. We know of the 4-prong pace attack that developed in the 1970s and 80s and right through the 90s. But Trinidad had a 4-prong spin attack. Good evening and welcome to Paul. I am referring to Basil Butcher Jr., whose father was on that 63 tour. He missed the 1961 tour. And Dr. Vince Adams, who would have been a little boy at Kushtenborg, listening on the pocket radio as all of this was taking place, not knowing that one day he would be rubbing shoulders with some of these guys. Now, one of the things I have learned I've learned 2 things in my life, in terms of public engagement. One is that you cannot look at things by themselves. There's always intersection. And I learned very early after reading as a schoolboy, Beyond the Boundary. One of my teachers handed me the book and said, read this. And when I saw the title of the book, I said, well, I understand. I was just in, I think, 3rd form or something like that. And I think it was one of my English teachers, Paul King, who handed me that book. And he was a guy that always took us above where we were. We used to be reading Derek Walcott's plays, and one of the hardest books that I ever read. I had to read it 3 times in my life before I could understand it. It was Wilson Harris Peacock. I still couldn't understand what the chap said. But from reading Beyond the Boundary the first time, I learned about the connection between and among things, so that cricket by itself is not just a game, it's connected to so many other things. And the second thing I learned much later in life is that one of the things that builds a nation is that you repeat the glory of the nation over and over again, intentionally so. All right. I teach Black studies, and somebody like Thomas Jefferson doesn't play a positive role in Black studies. He's the first American theoretician of race. He argued in a small book called Notes on the State of Virginia, written in 1781. He argued that Native Indian people are brown people in white skin. So white people in brown skin, and that they could be civilized, but that Black people, they could not be civilized. But he's leaving it to science to prove that. And of course, later on in the 19th century, science of eugenics was to prove that Black people are not at the same level of white people, and the rest is history. But prior to the coming of Black studies in the 1960s, Jefferson was God. Jefferson was God, because they repeated it over and over again. And even when I teach it now, kids are coming in from high school where they learn that Jefferson is God. So you now come in and tell them, but Jefferson was not a nice chap to black people, you know. Jefferson had a black woman, Sally Hemings, who used to run around with. And you can see that the students' minds are trying to disentangle, 12 years of schooling in which they're taught about these founding fathers, how great they are. And now you're confronting them and saying, well, these men had some issues, right? The point I'm making is that you replete the glory of your society over and over and over again. It's part of nation building. We in the Caribbean are somewhat shy about doing that. And it's one of the things I learned from C.L.R. James, who looked at the Haitian Revolution and wrote a classic, Black Jacobins, in which he humanized the revolutionaries. Before that, they were written about by white people who saw them as savages who wanted to kill white people. And here is James writing a book that says, no, the Jacobins who created the French Revolution, these men are their equal, Louverture and Dessalines and so on. And what he did is humanize them, intentionally so. Some of the younger scholars today are saying that, well, C.L.R. James was romantic, that they were false in the Haitian Revolution and so on. Of course they were false, but it was a glory. And I think we in Guyana are tasked now in doing the same thing with our 1763 revolution, which our historians have said was a failed revolution. How can you fail when you held a colony against the great Dutch for 1 year and more? Guyana was easily, Berbice was easily the first Black republic, But so you tell your glory story over and over and over again. And I think if people like these young people, and you all know I love Admire, but if I have anything to do with that little boy, I would put him in a classroom and I would say, you read this, you watch West Indies cricket from the 1920s to now. I think he's going to become a better boy. And I'm not picking on him because the rest are the same. But I think part of what we are failing these young men with is that we are not repeating. When they open the newspaper, on they turn on the TV, they must see West Indian glory over and over and over again, because it helps to shape their sense of themselves and where they are in relation to the rest of the world. I think, because we don't do that as a society, I think we are failing young people, and we have young people with talent who are coming through, but talent was not always your ability to bat and bowl and feel, but is how you channel that into something larger than you, larger than the game itself, and as C.L.R. James said, beyond the boundary. Sometimes you have to inflate your achievements in a world that don't need islands no more. They used to need islands for sugar for them and coffee and cocoa and so on. They don't need us for that anymore, because now it's oil. I mean, they need Guyana, right? And that is why we got to get it right in Guyana. But they don't need islands for coffee and sugar and thing no more. And so you have to intentionally, quote unquote, romanticize and inflate what you produce. I remember a young scholar, Dr. Gonzalez, Ralph, that SOB now. But I still like it, He began about 20 years ago in academic circles to talk about the Caribbean civilization. And I remember some young scholars are saying, well, they don't like the term civilization because, the Europeans use the term, Jefferson used it, you can civilize native Indians. And so they say it has a negative connotation. And some of us argue, no. We have always had to take European things and put it to stand up. Because Europeans are always walking on their head back in the colonial times. And we had to put them on the foot, right? So we take the game that they invent to oppress us, and we turn that game into an act of liberation. And we've always been called upon to do that. And so therefore, we are a civilization. We have contributed to the world in ways that go beyond our size. You see? So part of playing what we played it earlier today in the 1960s and West Indies cricket is really to lift ourselves up and to say we are not third world. We may be third world in European classification, but Sobers is no third world. Sobers is first world, right? Worrell wasn't a 3 cents chap. As Worrell was boarding that plane to go before he left to go on that 61 tour, CLR James sent him a note, and he put the note in his pocket. And the folklore has it that as he sat on the plane, he took out the note. And CLR James said in that note, if you're able to beat or compete with the Australians, it will prove to the world that the West Indies is ready for independence. And so the burden of West Indian independence was not on politicians. It was on those men with those white flannels, that if they could beat England and beat Australia, they could prove that we could govern ourselves. And if Worrell was able to lead the team with distinction, it shows that a black West Indian could be a leader, and we could lead ourselves. And the rest is history, right? So that the game of cricket is more than just cricket. That is why, my students always ask me, Dr. Hines, why when black professors, they're talking about psychology or political science, and all of a sudden they start to talk about John Coltrane and they start talking about Muhammad Ali and sports and thing. And you have to take pains to say, when you are oppressed, you don't look for one door to get free. Every possible way you look for a door to get free. And so for us, education is not a linear, straight thing. It's a thing, what Professor Nettleford said, we are people who are engaged in order in chaos and chaos in order. And only we could understand that dialectic. The other night I was on with Dr. Adams, and I was talking about cousin Christy Bell from a village. She used to sell loose cigarette, and she there in the week, and she la la la, and then she drop asleep. And then by trying to pull away she cigarette. And as she sleep, she hold lamp and a cigarette back tight. And when I pull away, what are you ras do? So she gone from La La to God to Ayoras, and then she go back to God. Only we West Indians can understand that order in chaos. Are we for God, but are we cuss next minute? And we cuss and for God, and so on. And Cousin Christy Bell and them used to say, God go understand. The Bible says understanding God. So when we say, are you ras? You go understand. Good evening, and welcome to Politics 101. Let me bring in the expert, because I am no expert. I'm just a little boy from Buxton trying to rub shoulders with these big boy Butcher. I think it was 1970. We were playing in Trinidad, and Basil Butcher, he made a century. His son gonna tell me, but in that year he made a century. And we had an ignorant by name Mantle. When we say ignorant, I don't mean ignorant in white people's sense. Ignorant Mantle, you batter all the time when you bowl him. He said, me know out. and you bat, and you grab only 3-4 times. And when he done, he pick up his bat and he ball and he go away. And man, till he got tight tongue. So he come there and he said, I gonna go out with to the Orange Garden, Orange will talk about, and then there, I'll be a little by Orange a bowl him 4 or 5 times. Here he tell Orange, you not gonna bowl me today because Basil Butcher. Basil Butcher. So you have a Basil Butcher Jr. and you have a Vincent Adams. Them boys, no cricket good. Don't worry me. Me is a little boy from Boxing Line Top. Orin Newton, good evening, my brother. The security chief. I hope you're keeping things secure because we're going down to the home stretch. And we got to secure ourselves. So I hope you get the security apparatus ready there because you got to get security not just for Norton. Because if you go in as a coalition, you got security for Norton, Nigel, and a fellow named David. Good evening. Hey, gentlemen.
Good evening, Dr. Hines.
So Dr. Hines, Dr. Hines, what with Adams? You don't want me as part of your campaign or what?
But you got to get security for Adams to buy. You got to get security, Mr. Newton. You have to have security for Adams too.
Yeah, especially them guys got me on the radar, you know.
Gentlemen, Basil in 1970 was I know he had taken a 5-4 against Trinidad. Only optimistic next spin.
That was against England in Trinidad.
It was against England.
But in local competition, he never took a 5-4.
I gotta check that. I don't know about that.
But I know he had one of the, maybe not 5, but I know one of the persons he had bowled was a chap named Tony Lewis. Was Tony Lewis? Yeah. Trinidad keeper.
Wicket keeper.
Yes, he bowled the ball.
He used to live in New York.
He's in New York. Right.
Yeah, I think he moved to California now, though.
But he got the 5-4 in Trinidad, though. He got the 5-4.
Yeah, I know he got a 5-4 against the 68 team when Sobers that year when Sobers made the controversial declaration. Yeah.
Here, you remember I tell you the story? I used to play for Mackenzie all the time, and the first game I played against Mackenzie for DCC, and of course Butcher. When I used to play for Mackenzie, Butcher used to carry DCC all the time. DCC come play like spin googly bowling. It's like I clap 100 per knee, and here he said it's only because the field so small. So when we go in the pavilion, I say you take me. I say you take me for them English parkour that you bowl out. I tell you, but you have to know that I learned from the best.
But the interesting thing, as you're checking, I'm looking for my
No, he didn't get no damn wickets in 1970.
Wasn't 1970? Well,
no.
When did he retire? He retired in 70, right?
71.
71. Yeah, I'm looking for my history of West Indies cricket to go through them thing, but I don't know. I probably could put it in another room. Doc.
Yeah.
That 1961 Test series, which still is the most talked about series, I would think, in cricket. I've heard about the body line in the 1940s. We in the West Indies know about our 4-prong attack, but the world doesn't seem to get enough of 1961. Why? And this is a question for both you and Butcher. Can turn you all into philosophers tonight.
Well, of course, we know the one, well, not an incident, but the one event that everybody remembers.
Thai test.
The Thai test, so that's the most that that's the one thing in those days. And I remembered in those days we used to look, we had live TV. We used to look at things on video, and if they got a little tape, them old tape, we used to go pack up at the Mackenzie Sports Club or DCC, wherever, and we going over them videos and seeing them score. But that's the one thing that stays in everybody's mind. But then of course it took us to me. That was the series probably that took us to a different level in terms of respect. You know, when you see, you know, here we go. I mean, we're dignified. I mean, you go to Australia and you get the people, not only the players, but the people respected you. So we elevated ourselves as a team, both on and off the field. And a lot of it had to do, I always start with the leadership. It's just that we had the kind of leadership at the time that was necessary in this guy named Sir Frank Worrell. You know, he who brought that dignity to the team. So more than even the results, it was that respect that he brought to the team, and just everybody just fell in love with the team. And then of course we always remember the Joe Solomon run out.
Right. And of course, this is the turn of the 1960s. We are grappling with the Federation, trying to bring the West Indies together as one nation. A lot is happening. We are coming out of the 1950s and we're moving into the period of independence. It's quite a period in West Indian history. And so all of this is unfolding against the background of what is happening in the larger society. Basil Butcher, why is it that we cannot get enough of that series, and in particular the tie test?
I think from a world cricketing perspective, it's the tie test, because I think, if memory serves me correct, it was the first ever tie test in
Yes.
Has there been any other, Basil, before you finish?
Yes.
It's Pakistan and Australia, I think, or India and Australia. One of the two had a tie test in the 80s.
Okay.
But that seminal moment in terms of the tie test from a world cricketing perspective. However, from a West Indian perspective, here it was the first time we had a captain of African descent who was leading the team on a tour, a series. Because we all know George Headley was the first person of African descent to captain the West Indies team. But here was the first time we going on a tour and we have a captain of African descent after all the hue and cry that had been going on for years, right? And then the incident of the tie test. And also it was a relatively young team, and there were some top performances. Kanai making separate hundreds, Lance Gibbs taking a hat trick. Sobers is starting to more establish himself even more on the world stage, you know. Wes Hall now coming into, you know, so all the makings of what would become the very good or great West Indies teams through the 60s to close to the late 60s. You saw the beginnings of that with that team, as the folks who were the older folks that were around then would say to you, that was the team that put us on the map in terms of West Indies cricket, because we played Australia really tight there, and that was the beginning. From there, the team took off, where we went and beat the Colonial Master 2 times in the backyard in 63 and then 66. You know, so I always tell people that to a certain generation, that West Indies team is the greatest West Indies team ever. All due respect to Lloyd's teams, because of the circumstances that surrounded the wider society, coming out of colonialism, becoming newly independent nations, and those teams made West Indians gave us our quote unquote man and womanhood. You know, we felt we belong on the level with anybody. That's what that psyche, those teams. Because you often hear people from that generation refer to the players of those teams, irrespective of their stats or whatever, as great so and so, great so and so. Although their stats may not give them the moniker of great, but because in their mind what they did to their psyche as a West Indian people all around the world. That's why I think 1961 series to Australia is so important, because that was the beginning.
I'm very glad, Basil, that both you and Doc went there, because I'm writing something now on the glory days with the Lloyd Richards team. And my thesis is that to understand and to put in perspective what Lloyd and Richards were able to do with that team, you have to go back to the 1960s.
Yeah.
And what that 1960s team did. All right. And my argument as a social scientist is that the Lloyd Richards phenomenon could not have been possible.
Correct.
Without the 1950s. And I was reflecting on Doc, and I'm coming back to you, on the fact that you as a young man made the Guyana team. You got injured, came back and played, but could not get back into that team. So even at the level of the territories, all right? So it's not just the West Indies cricket at the top, the apex. It's what was being fed into the apex. You could go in, and I think Barbados was presumption enough in 1967 to believe they could play the rest of the
world.
Yeah.
Yes, and while that match was going on, Frank Warilla died, and they were bringing his body back from Jamaica to Barbados, and they circled the ground. And of course, Warilla would have had a problem with that because he was a West Indian national. Remember, he's Barbadian, but he lives in Jamaica, working at university and playing for Jamaica.
Mm-hmm.
And Rezal had played for Trinidad.
Yes.
Walcott had played for Guyana. Right. So it was a period of regional integration. And so as we talk about the great West Indies team, we often do not talk about the great riches we had in our national teams, right? I heard you guys talk about Mears, who played with Addy. And I met one of his daughters years ago, and she would talk about her father. I've read about Mears and things, but I didn't know he was that good until she was relating to me what he said, and then here Addy talking about that those guys would have walked in to this West Indies team.
Yeah.
Because Dr. Hines, I went to see the premiere of Fire in Babylon. Because it premiered right in New York City, the Tribeca Film Festival. So the producer and the director was there. So after there was a question and answer. And my question to them was, how come you did not include the 60s team upon which the shoulders the Clive Lloyd and so team stood on? And he said it was a matter of budget. But I think the guy was a great Viv Richards fan. Because one of my other disappointments with that Fire in Babylon, the architect of the team got a smidgen in Clive Lloyd.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You'll hear Richards and all the others talking more, and there was this one small part that Clive Lloyd got to speak. Because as I'm watching the show, I'm saying to myself, where is Clive? The show went for a good 15, close to 20 minutes or so. And then we see Clive Lloyd. And then it was for a short time. And we didn't see Clive Lloyd again. So, I mean, Lawrence Shaw and me had a conversation about that film. And Lawrence Shaw said to me, Young Butch, I mean, I like it. So I said, why you don't like the show? Why you didn't like it? He said, because, and for the same reason I asked, he said, because we stood on the shoulders of your father, Gary and Rohan and Lance and those guys, and they were not acknowledged in that show. So he said for that reason, he's like, and I say, Yaga, the only way we can get that is a Caribbean person gotta make
Thank you very much.
We have to tell our own story.
Let
others tell it for us.
That's it.
But I think Dr. Hines touching it, and we've touched on it in several of these programs, where it's not just the physical ability of being and I think that's what separates the two teams, the 60s under Frank Ward and Clive. There's no question in my mind in terms of just the the physical attributes. That Clive Lloyd team is going to be a tough team to get a better team.
Right.
What is the the circumstance under which these guys played at that particular time? And you always said that, right? That's the thing that we need to inculcate in the upcoming players, because what that brought about is the pride, the value of pride that team established there on the front court. And that's the kind of thing that I don't think that the younger, that the up and coming cricketers, it's all about money. And I hate to say it, but it's all about that. But we need to let them understand that pride playing for your country and for the region is much more important than money. Go ahead and make your money. We all support you. But don't take your money and because you get the money, forget about what brought you there and the people that you represent. And I think that's the core part of our conversation that we're getting at.
Because
go ahead, Basil.
Along those same lines, my father said when they arrived in England in 1963, Worrell said to them, they only got 2 superstars on this team, myself and Valentine. Because if you remember in those days, unless you did the business in England, you were not recognized as a top player. Although Sobers already set the world record, as I mentioned earlier, Kanai making separate hundreds in Australia, making the double century in India, Lance Gibbs taking a hat trick and so on. He said we had 2 superstars. And then he said another thing. He said when we walk out on the field to play, we're not only playing for ourselves, we're playing for our people back home and all them black man here in England. Because he said the difference between winning and losing is that some of our people could lose their jobs if we lose. You see, when we win, they walk into work with a chest puff and the white man can't tell them nothing because we beat the. So that was that kind of message. It's not although the circumstances is not the same, however, that message still rings true because every time a West Indies team walks onto the field, they're not just representing themselves, they're representing the people of the region and Caribbean people around the globe. Because many of us, our moods change with a win versus a loss.
Doctor, I want to go back to the riches at the left and the relationship between the national teams and the regional teams back then, right? And let me put in this little thing. The Super 50 just finished. I started to watch the first couple of games, but once England arrived, I ain't wearing Super 50 no more. Right? I look at it, I follow the score, but it doesn't capture the imagination in the same way as back in the 60s and the 70s, where the national cricket. And there was not the money that was put into the cricket infrastructure back then. So you couldn't say it was money that caused our national teams to be so strong that a match between Barbados and Guyana was like a test match, right? In many regards. Talk to us, Adi, what was the added ingredient beyond the cricket we saw on the field that made our national teams so strong? Was it commitment? Was it ambition? Was it nationalism? Was it all of those? Tell us.
Well, again, I get back to this word pride. Pride. I mean, you remember in those days, nobody thought about money. But, Basil Father went on a few tours. But how many tours you used to get in a year? Maybe one?
One tour a year.
One, okay. So it wasn't about the money because all of those guys, they had a full-time job.
Correct.
Basil Father, Joe Salomon, and all of them worked at the sugar estate. And then Basil Father later worked for McKenzie.
Yeah.
So you ask those guys, it was about playing for your country. And at least with me, there was nothing more. Let me tell you something. If somebody asked me what was one of my biggest accomplishments, it was that. when you get named in your national team, Dr. Hines, I don't care what team it is, even if it's Litty, you're the best in the whole, you're the best in the 11 of your entire country. And then when you walk out on the field, you know, it's the pressure. And a lot of times you walk out there as a batsman, it's not about you. You're afraid to fail as to what the reaction of the people will be. So when you walk out there, it's not really about you. So that's the most important thing that I think that, and why I keep saying it doesn't matter with these guys, because what the heck, even if they go out there, they feel, you know, they got their big check to collect, and they can't wait to get off the field, because that one game is not gonna look. You know, when I look at the Ghana team, at that same time when I was trying to get back into the team, you had Ambassador probably is either five batsmen, Guyanese batsmen were in the top 6 order. So, and then it was Frederick Skamash from Guyana. So you forget about if you're opening batting, because you can't get in there. Because sometimes when you're opening batting, that's it.
Yes.
Look, that we talk about Vincent Mears. I still think he's the best West Indian batsman that didn't play Test cricket. Vincent Mears was, a lot of people don't know, he was ahead of Clive Lloyd. But Vincent couldn't get into the West Indies team. When he made it in that season, when he made 47 in the first game against Trinidad, to get Clive to play in Barbados, they had to bring him in, and then they let him open batting for the very first time in his life. And he failed, and that's basically was it for him for his entire career. You had a guy named Rex Ramnaresh. I always say Rex Ram. Bernard Julian and them couldn't even carry Rex Ramnaresh. But Rex used to bat late, like 7, 8. He was not. Rex could have bat in, if he had gone to Trinidad or any one of those places, he would have made the West Indies team. He would have been batting up. Look, when I tried to come back, and I was making runs, you know, I'd come right back, first game, making the County 100, make a whole bunch of Case Cup runs. I remember Everton Weeks and Charlie Davis begged me to come to, because I had started going to UG, begged me, because Everton Weeks was the head selector, and he loved me, you know, and Wesal. They thought, you know, they really liked me. And they were begging me to leave UG to go to Trinidad, because Wes was the head coach of the Trinidadian team. And they said, Vince, go to the University of West Indies, and you will play for Trinidad, and you're gonna get in the West Indies team, playing for Trinidad. But you know, a little by, you know, you're left at home, forgot a strange place, you know, nobody and that type of thing. And I'd already started UG, and I had my interest had changed somewhat. But it was in those days when you play in like a team like Guyana, we had a lot of players. Cornelius should have been in the West Indies team. I remember in '69, Cornelius he got like 20 wickets or something. And we were at a cocktail party in Jamaica. And Alan Ray. Alan Ray come to and tap him on the shoulder. It was me, Shorty, and Lance Short and Rex Collins. We tap him on the shoulder and say, pack your bags, youngster. You're going to, because they were going to pick the team to go to England, the 69 to go to pack your bags. And he grinning from ear to ear. Rex Collins called me and he said he just got the kiss of death. He ain't going nowhere. And so said, so done. Halford and them couldn't bowl with Carney, and Carney could have bat. Carney was batting at 3 and 4, batting from 1 to 5 in the Ghana team. But when he was playing with the big boys, he had to bat down in order like 7, 8 while he bowling his leg spin googly. But in those days, but you still keep playing, you know, you still fight the way because you want to play, not even if it's 12 man. you know, you're glad. When I used to play 12 man in the Mackenzie Case Cup team, that was the best thing that, look, I just love to be around. Because when you travel, you know, like when you had to come from Mackenzie to play in Georgetown, not only you with Butcher, rubbing shoulders with Butcher, but when you get to Georgetown, all the national players, you know, you're rubbing shoulders with them in the dressing room, you sit down, you feel, you know what I mean? So those are the kinds of things that used to incentivize us to be in that company and play for your country. But nowadays, it's different. It's different.
But any added comments?
Yeah, look, playing. I remember Paidana telling me something. He said, when Shell Shield start, every season was dog eat dog.
Yep.
Because usually you might get 1 or 2 spaces available in the West Indies test team. And you add up all the players from the various territories that got to fight for that place. I always remember, one in 1978 at the start of the season, as Fredo retired, opening spaces there. And at the start of the season, you got Faoud Bacchus, Leonard Bacon, Richard Gabriel, Lockhart Sebastian, Basil Williams, Richard Austin, Haynes, and Alvin Greenwich. Everybody. So every week I remember I look in the papers to see who make runs.
That's right.
Checking, you know what I mean? Me playing, but I looking to see because I got me favorites, right? And so they're fighting to get one space, and that was how intense the competition was. And I think, like you said, Dr. Hines, I don't look at West Indies cricket anymore with a nationalistic view when it comes to regional cricket like we had in the past. Because I don't even think these youngsters today got that nationalistic intensity in terms of how they're representing the country, your country, when you walk out there to do battle with somebody else from another country. Because that was the unique thing about West Indies first class cricket, was that it was a national teams playing against each other. So it brought another level of intensity that you wouldn't find anywhere else in the world. But I don't think that's there anymore.
I want to reflect on something, yeah? And good evening to all of you who are joining us. Good evening, Terry and from Belladrum, Terry and Granville. Jonah and Bob. Jonah, you're flying all over the world. You're posing up and so on. Actually joining us from the old colonial mother country. Asher, my countryman from Buxton. Good evening. Dennis Booker, good evening. Emily, you have been missing in action recently. It was good to see you out tonight. The ladies are outnumbering the men. Look.
But Dr. Hines, just quick, I don't want to forget this. As Vincent was talking names, Leslie Amsterdam. My father spoke highly of Leslie Amsterdam.
Marcel, you took the word out of my mouth.
My father told me, he said, Steve should have played more, and he was not an opening batsman also. He was a middle order batsman. But how is he going to get in when it's Butcher, Kanai, and Solomon in the middle?
Mm-hmm.
You took my thought out of me, Marcel, because I was just about to say exactly what I was just about to say here. But Big Marcel is going to disagree with me because his best batsman after the top would be Les Amsterdam. He always believed.
Yes, he always.
Les Amsterdam was one of the greats that didn't get a chance.
Was a batsman.
Yeah.
And the few times Amsterdam get to play, he got 100 in a game.
100.
Yeah. I think.
And what a wonderful
team or something like that.
Yeah. What a wonderful human being. And I had the opportunity of interacting with him as the conflict there was unfolding over the last decade in Guyanese cricket, and he was still very active. And so I got a chance to talk with him a lot because, the guys would invite me to some meetings to, share some perspective. And that man is sitting on a font of knowledge of the game. He comes at it not just knowledge as a player, but also as an administrator. And he has a kind of folksy, because as you all would know, he stayed on the ground, and I found that his knowledge of the game was incomparable. Leslie Amsterdam,
and he was a great gentleman, really.
Oh yes, one of the gentlest human beings. And in the couple of years that I interacted with him. Look, as everybody knows my politics and knows that I was an anti-Burnham person in terms of Guyanese politics. But in 1973, Clive is not brought back. The Burnham government brings back Clive. Government pays, right? And we know the rest is history, right? He makes 100 in the territorial match against Australia and goes on to a big 178 at border. 1981, Clive is late. The helicopter picks Clive up at the airport and lands him at the football field next door and bring it in. I look at Rowley and Keith Mitchell and this Lampy Pumpy one we get in Guyana and the intervention in cricket. And I'm saying you can see for them it's a showman thing. But you always, and I give those two examples of Burnham, yeah? Although I was anti-Burnham.
God, give Jackie jacket when
at that time I separate Burnham from politics because cricket is what it is. And here is one of my heroes, Clive Lloyd, got injured. The West Indies board, like they're gone done with it. And here this politician intervenes, right? And Burnham, although Burnham was a showman, he didn't get in front of the show, all right? He stayed behind. But thing. And I want you all to speak to that commitment of that generation of political leaders and their commitment to the game and the ones that we have now. Do you all feel that they're committed in the same way that the Barrows and I mean, this here is one of my Bible. Wherever I go,
Manly.
Wherever I go, I just pack this book first. Then I moving from place to place.
That's a big book, boy.
yeah. It's a big.
So I want you all to talk about the commitment of this generation of leaders and the commitment of the present generations, how different they are. I don't want to say what some are more committed than others, because I think they're all committed. But I want you all to speak to the difference of commitment. I'll start with you, Basil.
Look, again, those leaders of the time, you're talking about the Burnhams, the Barrows, the Manleys, etc. Remember, those guys were there with they were all part of the anti-colonial movements in their respective territories, and they understand the intricate connection with cricket and our societies, how important cricket was for our societies. You know, it was so imbued. It was, as we would say, it's part of the cultural milieu of the Caribbean. So they understood that clearly and the importance thereof. It was great what Burnham did in helping to facilitate Clive coming back home, because he was pretty much stranded, you know, laid up in a hospital, thinking that his career, where is he going to, you know, and it was able to facilitate him coming back home. And other Caribbean leaders got involved in along those lines. I think Keith Mitchell is sincere, because he is an avid, serious cricket fan.
He played the game. He
played for Grenada and so on and so forth. You know, I just think that the environment of today precluded him doing more than he would have liked to be able to have done. You know, so I would just say, just like how we all these countries got the same name, but the societies are no longer the same societies as they were in yesterday year. So again, anybody coming out of that are not gonna have the same thing about cricket. Like even though they love the game, not the same thing like we were in the yesterday years. You know, I mean, all of us here as youngsters growing up, we knew all the players who play for West Indies, even though we never see them play.
Right.
But if we could recognize them because we see the picture in the newspaper. If they walk on the street, we could say, oh, look like Walcott, or look Everton Weeks. Even though we never see them play, we see the picture in the paper or something like of the sort. Right? We knew all of them. The generations.
Yeah.
the players that played in the past. I mean, even a guy like Clive Lloyd, as great as Clive Lloyd is, Clive Lloyd is just a name. Yeah. Even Viv Richards is just a name. Yeah. And to some of them, Brian Lara is just a name.
Right. Adi,
I totally agree with what Basil said, but when you look back at those leaders, and Basil touched on it, remember in those days we had a chip on our shoulder, if you will, in a positive light, in terms of we were getting out of colonialism. Mm-hmm. We had to prove a point. Mm-hmm. And the cricket team was the team that was leading the way in that respect, with the Frank Worrell team, with the team that went to England. So Barnum and those people understand that. What is that national pride? Mm-hmm. Nowadays, you were absolutely correct, Dr. Hines, that all we're getting is a poppy show with these current leaders. They're like this new, I can't even remember this new thing in Guyana.
The Super League, the Global
I still can't figure out what that, I still can't figure that out. But we know what it is. It's again to put them there to use cricket. They're using cricket to bring in the money and to promote themselves.
Promote themselves politically.
That's what this is. In those days, Barnum didn't bring home Clive Lloyd to promote himself.
There you go.
Barnum bring home Clive because he knows the value of Clive coming and the what he's gonna bring to the team, the West Indies. You can't leave out a man like Clive Lloyd just like that. He knew that it wasn't even about Clive Lloyd personally, but he knew what Clive's value was at the time, and he decided whether it's a chance or not. But he said, I think it's the right thing to do, and I'm gonna do it. He didn't do it for himself, but it's the opposite to what we're seeing with these jokers that we currently have. It's about themselves. It's promoting themselves.
Yeah, because the thing about with the Barnum, the Clive, the guy on the board is who approached Barnum.
There you go.
Yeah, they approached Barnum and said, look, we need help here, and Forbes came through.
Yeah. Good evening to all of you. Ahmed Usman Chaudhry from Bangladesh. It's good to see Bangladeshis on the program here tonight. Nice. Of course, Bangladesh is touring the West Indies.
That's probably why he's paying attention.
Good evening, Usman. Terry Weeks, my brother from the United Kingdom, the music man from Mocha, you closed down the show tonight to come on to the program. Terry has this big music program, and it's like a group of them, and I have a good friend who's part of the group, and he plays music, and they have virtual parties and,
nice.
and so on and things. But I was told that Terry would close down his program to come to Politics 101.
Wow.
He would, right, so he's on with us on Cricket Tonight, and he's a Mocha man. Good evening, Terry. Ralph Fredericks, good evening. Ralph is Lester Bird. Lester Bird played for footballer. I understand he was very good because
Lester Bird told me that he used to bring it. I met him one time in Antigua when I went, and I was introduced to him, and he was telling me, I used to bring it, young for
Yeah, but my good friend
you would have played against him when you
I didn't play against him.
I think he had gone away to study by then.
Yeah, I played against my good friend Vance Emery.
Vance, yes.
Vance Emery was a solid batsman.
Player, yeah.
He, as a matter of fact, he and I made our debut in the same game in '69 at St. Kitts. He made, I think he made 30 something and a 40 something in the two innings that in that game. He was a very solid player.
Good evening to those of you who join us from St. Kitts Nevis. It's still all the players from St. Kitts Nevis and Anguilla came from Nevis and Anguilla Omari Banks.
Mm-hmm.
And this young man, Michael Louis, is the first Kittitian.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, all from,
the others would come, such as the first one was El Comendo Willett.
Willett in 73.
From Nevis.
From
Nevis. Then you had Keith Atherton also from Nevis.
Right, from Nevis. Stuart Williams from Nevis.
Stuart Williams also from Nevis.
Right. Carl Tuckett. All of them. And well, Carl Tuckett played one day. But in terms of test match, he didn't play. But they came from and even Anguilla, Omari Banks, who I think was such a promising cricketer and just left, and he's now a big musician. Right. He was part of
this guy Casey Carty, although he's originally from Anguilla, his family there, Anguilla.
Right, Anguilla.
They emigrated to St. Martin.
Right. So Michael Louis is the first actual kitchen.
I didn't realize that. I never realized that.
Actually, the very first.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, Victor Eddy, who I'm sure you all know.
Oh, yeah.
I know Victor.
I always thought that he was West Indies material.
I mean, Victor Eddy, some people say that Victor Eddy should have gone to India with that second 11 team under Alvin Kadicharan.
Right. Yeah.
I know some former West Indies players that feel strongly about that. You know, there were some negotiations in that selection, I would say, because there was a guy from Jamaica, they call him Farmer Brown, Errol Farmer Brown, but I really know who Errol Farmer Brown. He got selected, and the guy who was a backup wicketkeeper, Randy Leon, ahead of Paidana. So they say that there was a negotiation between Joey Carew and Joe Solomon to the run. You know, that has been reputed. You know, because I remember when the next year Guyana played the Shell Shield, and the old boy was the manager for the team in 79, and Guyana played Trinidad. And Shivnarine batted, and he chipped down and he missed the ball. Randy Leon is a keeper. He got up in the air, the ball passed through and got for 4 bites. And Payana started sitting down next to you. But your white turned to Pay and said, you see, that's a shite that went to India in front of
Hey, but Basil, y'all tell, there was a guy who made his debut also in that 69 that I thought would have definitely played for the West Indies. A guy by the name of Livington Sargent.
Yes.
That guy, he was ahead of Allen. He made 70-something in both innings against us. And I tell you, he danced up Ramnaresh, English, and Blair.
Yes,
I mean,
he was a good player of pace bowling. Good player of pace.
He roughed them up. But I thought that he would have made it eventually in the West Indies, but just to give he didn't do very well. He just disappeared.
A lot of those guys, they came in, but they couldn't have the sustained performances.
Right.
Consistency in the Shell Shield. And you know, again, it was high competition, and you know, as soon as you slip, you slide.
That's right. You had Basil. I remember them times. You know, you see these guys getting in these teams, making a 50 or a 1 or 200. In those days, you had, you had Peter Lashley. Every time he turned on, he's a double. You had Mac Morris, and you had this other guy, Renford Pinnock. Them guys,
Morris Foster.
Every time. You dealing not only with the Guyana batsman, but you got people every time you open the paper, so boom. Them buys hundreds all the time. Like Basil Fadi used to say, if you make nobody remember if you make 100.
Vincent, Larry Gomes' elder brother, Sheldon.
He could have feel.
Oh yeah.
He got a double against Jamaican.
Yeah. And he was one of the best fieldsmen I see.
Because I understand.
Oh yeah, he played with me in under 19 a couple of years. He played 2 times. 2 times he played. No, he was.
I understand whenever West Indies was playing Trinidad, when he was playing, he would always be the emergency fieldsman because of how good
he really could.
Yeah. Good evening, Robin. On Amsterdam, we were just talking about your father, and Robin is saying here that his father was a good player. That's why, as I said, we live in a small society. When you're talking name, you gotta be careful.
Yes.
Robin, thank you so much for gracing our show. As I said, I knew of your father when I was a boy following cricket, but then I got to know him over the last decade. He was a wonderful chap. Yes, Basil.
I remember my father's last match, our second to last match at Bordeaux against Trinidad in 71. We make 106 or something, and he was 90 not out overnight. And we coming in, me, my mother, and my other brother Brian. We coming in with my father. And let's see, you know the main gate, you know the bar, the bridge, you know they got the bars there, right?
Yeah.
He was sitting on the bar, and when he said, "Hey, Butch, you bring your family to see you bring up the 100." That's my first memory of Leslie Amsterdam. That was my first memory back in 71.
He was a great, nice, and very nice.
Yeah. Robin, say hi to your daddy for me, man. I haven't been seeing him in recent times because they solved the cricket thing now in Guyana and so on, right? But he was an advocate for.
Is he still in Guyana?
I think he's still up to a couple of years ago. I know he was still there. Huh?
Who are you talking about? Which Amsterdam?
Leslie Amsterdam.
No, he's passed for years now, man.
Oh, he's passed. No.
You're talking about his son, Adrian.
I'm talking about his son. Yes, his son.
Adrian. Okay.
Adrian.
Yeah.
Yes. Good evening to you, Samuel Mingo, Walter Sandiford. Good evening, Reginald Broderson. Good evening to all of you. Adrian, that's his son. Yes, right.
I know. And is that Reginald Broderson who used to be the PS?
I think.
Yeah, I know him very well.
Speak for yourself, Mr. Broderson. Are you the PS?
He's a man that always visited DCC. He's a DCC fan. That's how I know him.
Brothers, we've had 3 days of Test cricket, and whatever one can say, it was Test cricket. It was Test cricket. I mean, there are always things to say that we didn't like or didn't go a certain way. But I am satisfied that it was 3 days of real Test cricket. And what would I give to see the Hetmeyers and Purans and the rest of them going through that grilling. All right? You look at Mikel Louis. A lot of limitations, but stuck it out. Graves, I don't think, is what we would call a naturally talented batsman, but character, guts, perseverance. And I don't know if it's because I get old now, right? The dazzling shots, I still like to see that. But I want to see grit. I want to see character. I want to see commitment, you know? Atenes, I think of the three, he's perhaps the most gifted, and so on. All right, but even he understood what it is to pace and innings. Your assessment of the first 3 days. Start with you, Doc.
No, without question, I've said it here. I've never seen a West Indies team bat the way that they did in terms of the discipline. This year was your classic Test batting that we need, and it even more than that. It came from the youngsters. Yes. It came from the youngsters, which gave us a lot of hope. If we can maintain this core batting, I think we've got a bright future. And I want to go back to, because Basil Fada was the biggest philosopher that there was. And
yes,
and when I look at the two guys who got out in the 90s, and as soon as you see the start getting a little, you know what you always just say, you got to get used to making 100. When you see you getting out, so you're not accustomed to making 100. But when you're used to making 100, it becomes a norm that going, you get the 80s and 90s, 100s is gonna come, and you can see the difference with Greaves. Greaves just come off with 300s to him. Right. He knew exactly what it's going to take. But the other two guys, when they're approaching, it's just, you lose concentration, but nevertheless, they're going to learn. But this Greaves guy, very impressive. But here's the other thing that I would like to point out. For all the years, with Brafitt, Braffett still has his technique is shocking. Braffett is still leaving that gap between his bat and pad. And if you look at the difference between him and Louis, if you look at it, Louis is a natural front foot player, but every time Louis plays on the front foot, that bat is tied up right next to his pad. And I cannot believe Braffett is playing all of these years. And every time he goes out there and he pushes, he leaves that gap. So all you got to do is just keep bowling him that half cutter. You know, you set him up with cup and you bowl at the half cutter, and he's gonna go right through. How many times have I seen him get out like in that way? And this is a guy who's supposed to be the main steer. You can't be having that flaw in your technique because you know the other team. These guys have figured that out. For every single team, they've figured it out. So I'm kind of shocked that he still hadn't learned. But I really like. But the one thing that was disappointing to me, in as much as the bowlers bowled well, from the first, I thought that they were gonna go after them with the short pitch deliveries. It's only late. It's only today, this afternoon, they start shaking. I thought there's a Bangladesh team you're playing, guys. You've got 4 quicks in your team, plus Greaves. Go after them with a short pitch ball. Get them uncomfortable. Get them already in the back foot. Because when you start committing to the back foot, then you bowl it up to them, and you know they're trouble.
You sit in the
but you can see that they're going to kill you with spin. But you hit them. So I'm hoping in the second innings they've learned from this afternoon, seeing what happened. I hope in the second innings when they put them back in, they're going to come more with the short pitch deliveries.
But
I just want to ask Vincent a question, and then I'm gonna get after the answer. I made a point to people that when they were talking about Louis and Athanaze, I said, God, there were some of these guys of the opinion, why the coach didn't send out a message to tell them to calm down and so on. I said, hold on, gentlemen. Both of these guys have scored first-class hundreds, right? So the resource for them here is for them to fall back to what they did in the 90s in their first-class hundreds, and to follow, to try to replicate that template. And then once they break the seal in Test cricket now, they have them now a template in Test cricket to also men telling me stupidness. Vincent, isn't that correct?
Oh, absolutely. And that is why you see, and you know, like your father said, it all comes down to you see, like in first class cricket, you could get away with that. In our thing, you know, you get your 90s, you're anxious to get your 100, you pelt it. In this kind of cricket is different. That is why your father always say you got to get accustomed to making 100. When they start making 100, you're gonna see it's gonna be. And again, I compare it to Greaves. Right? Greaves just come off of 300s.
Exactly.
He knows this here is everyday thing to me. I get to me 90s. It's you know it's 100 for sure. But these guys, you know, they're now coming up. They got into the 90s. They got nervous. But I agree with you, Basil. It's your mind works the same way. You know, you get away with it. Whatever you did to get to your 100, you hit a 6 or a 4, and you know that's what but you might be able to get away with it at a certain level. But when you get to your 90s here, them guys know you know, they know that because them guys got the batting psychology too. That because they're batsmen, they know exactly how you just feel when you get into your 90s, and they crowd you. And I remember, you know, these things just come back. I remember playing in Linden, and I'm on 89 against Martino, was in a Case Cup game, and I beat him bowling and Rex Collymore bowling, put the man at forward short leg. And I turned to Rex, your damn eyes past me. And you know what I can do? The first delivery out to Rex and for the over, jump down the wicket for knock you out to the for sure. So you know, for arm drive, as a matter of fact. And I arm drive, the ball hit the boy at senior mid-on and hit the pad or something, bump up in the air and get But I did not. But the psychology of those people is to put you in a mode where, you know, well, you know, you're gonna change. You lose concentration. Had he not put the man at city mid on, I would have played my normal game. And that's what is go on. These guys, the feeling team, as long as they've got little knowledge, they know how you're feeling. And they're gonna set you up to get you out to get you anxious. But I agree with you, Basil, definitely.
Yeah, because what I'm saying is that even your practices and your previous and if you scored 100, even in club or whatever, those are your resources until you start doing it at the highest level.
That's
no
right.
coach could help you and send a message out. You gotta work out that situation based on prior experience. But in the game, you know, as you described, Dr. Hines, I heard some people use the term for Greaves, scintillating 100. Come on, that's and another one, brilliant 100. I call it a fighting 100.
Yeah,
The guy scored 4 boundaries. You don't use brilliant and scintillating when you hit only 4 boundaries in 100. It was a fighting 100 he scored, and scoring 100 like that, I think I listened to my father. It puts him in good stead, because what it tells you as a batter, you had to struggle to make this 100. It didn't come easy. You understood how hard you had to work. So you got this experience, because I remember he used to tell me when Carl Hooper was going through his trials and tribulations, he said, you know, Hooper gotta make 100. We can get some edges. He got scratched. Now one of them easy fluent 100. We got dig and scratch, get some edges to 4 and so on. So you understand the grind that it takes to score 100. And once you got that foundation, I know Vincent would understand what I'm saying. It's like the 900-pound gorilla get taken off your back.
Yeah.
You know, because I know my father once told me a story. He's playing against Sugarboy Bajnat, and Sugarboy Bajnat was the legend. Anybody here but Sugarboy Bajnat? There's a man with both 30 overs and give you 40 runs, right?
Yeah.
And he said he made 106. Most of the 100 was singles, because Sugarboy Bajnat don't give away nothing. And he said it's after he made that 100, in the money he did, he know he could bat.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. You scratching through and fighting through to get 100. It tells you mentally, I belong here and I could play at this level, right? I am hoping that Mr. Atenes, because this is 3 times now we have seen Mr. Atenes in recent time throw his wicket when he set twice in the 90s, recent series like South Africa, batting so beautifully. Thought 100 was there. In England, I think he made 89 or something like that. Throw away. So I would hope that Mr. Atenes will learn that, look, as Vincent, you have spoken about this many times. The time when Tendulkar was getting out with a certain shot.
That's right. That's right.
He went into the next test.
The third test.
In the locker and said, I'm not going to, even when they ball it there, I am playing it. Went to make a double century.
A double.
Mr. Atenes will have to do something similar, in my view. He's got to put away them sweep shots when he gets into the 90s. Leave them alone and play and get your 100, and then you can take it back out to the closet. Because all 3 times, if you remember, you're out sweeping.
Yep.
Right? So that's what, in his case, he got to do. Louis, I think Louis, I know Louis must feel, I had to get this, I want to get this 100 now, we can chip down. He chipped down the wrong way, because he should have chipped to look to hit the man through the offside, because he would have get the full face, the bat and the ball. You know, but he go cross, and so
that's
the ball
right.
hit the outside edge.
But Basil, you see, the other beauty about Greaves, and you talk about a fighting inning. Remember, he batted with the tail, basically.
Yes.
It takes a lot of people start, well, I gotta up the tempo and all kinds of stuff. Roach did a great job with him. But he batted with the tail to get to that 100. He kept his cool. Nothing. A lot of people would have gotten out of their mode and did something stupid. So the guy, he has really, really impressed me. Greaves, I think Greaves and Louis, I think they're gonna be a major foundation. Louis at the top, and Greaves around the middle, I think they're going to be a major foundation in terms of stabilizing West Indies batting.
And if you saw Greaves 300s that he played in the recent 50 over, he batted exactly the same way.
The same, yes.
There was no difference.
That's what I
No
noted.
difference.
That's what I noted.
He batted the same exact. It was the same template.
And one of the things I looked at for a long time, I've not seen a West Indian batsman pick up the number of twos.
Yes.
Yeah.
He and Roach.
Yes.
I remember they calling how many twos they had run and how many threes they
Yes.
had run.
Yes.
So one of the things it was an attestment to his conditioning, that he had to run a whole lot to get to that 100.
He's fit.
But he didn't get them. He didn't get the boundaries. There was a lot of running, so it was a testament to his conditioning.
But the other thing that I noticed, Dr. Hines, of course, I was always also go to attitude off the field. Did you guys see the interview with him?
Yes.
The guy is so mild-mannered and humble. It was unbelievable in terms of his interview. I mean, I really fell in love with the guy, because when I listened to that, I said, okay, no wonder, his temperament on the field is that way. And by the way, don't forget, he's a very good seaman. I got to give up my buy Mears now for him.
When he came in first, he came in as a bowler who could back.
Bowler because he opened bowling for Barbados.
Yes.
And the other thing, you look at his career, he's had to show resiliency. He's had to deal with adversity, because he started with Barbados and then was not picked by Barbados. He went off to Windward Islands, and then from there now he's with Leeward Islands. So he has had to leave his country to go elsewhere. So all that adversity he has dealt with. In my books, my cousin Roland, who was a selector, on the radio program there in Barbados, when they were talking about the selection of the squad to England, the last tour we went to, he was of the opinion. He said he would not have been dropping Graves for Holder. He said, "What message are you sending to him?" Graves went to Australia and showed the signs that we were looking for. He was really good with the ball. He was a superb fielder, and he got a few knocks. He got a 30-something, a 20-something.
Yeah.
Said, what message are you sending to him that now, the guy's showing signs and you just throw him at the one side and Holder just walks back into the team? Now, as far as I'm concerned, he nailing Holder.
That's right.
I can't see getting back. But let me ask you guys quickly. Of course, my boy was always been Mears. What's going on with him? Not only with the selectors, Basil, but now, of course, he's not performing. He's serious as a captain of Team Sir. What is he doing batting at number 6?
But did he play? Did he play in the semifinals?
Not only that, Vincent.
He batted at number 6, Doc.
Yeah.
What is he doing batting number 6 in the Barbados team?
But Vincent, not only that, Mears left the team before they got to the knockout stage.
Yes,
I didn't know that.
He didn't play in the semifinals.
With a T10.
Oh, he's gone to the two. Oh, Jesus Christ.
My question was this to the Bajans: how could you appoint Mears as captain, knowing that he was going to leave the team with the business end of the tournament? That didn't make sense to me. You're giving him captaincy, and
And the game before that, to get in he batted at 6.
Yeah, I noticed he was in the semifinals. So I said, one of you.
But now I catch myself. He wasn't even in the semifinals.
The youngster, Kadeem Allen, the big, strong.
Yeah. What happened with him?
The two of them went to the
Oh, Jesus Christ, something wrong with me. Let me try to get in two things before we go. But before we get into two things, I noticed you all up and coming bad boy at 3 bells out fee. I put way 2 because his exuberance when he came on.
Oh, Mr. Sinclair.
Mr. Sinclair as a substitute fielder.
He's always that. He's always
yeah.
Always the energetic body.
But still get a belt fee.
Yes.
I get 4 for Admire and I get one free.
I mean, really and truly, the question has to be asked: how is he in the team after being sent home from his regional team? There seems to be there seems to be some
inconsistency,
not some congruence that should be happening. It's not happening. You know.
I agree.
Another symptom of West Indies cricket. Connect between the territories and the main board.
The board.
Yeah.
Look, it was difficult to pick the bowling combination for this match, and they went with 4 pacers because you could not leave out Keeman. You had to have.
I had Roach on the bench.
I had Roach on the bench too. I
was playing the spinner.
I was playing the spinner.
I was playing the spinner too.
But I also knew that they weren't going to pick Roach to bench
and put him on the bench.
Right? So
I knew he was going to play, but if I was picking my team, he wasn't playing.
He wasn't, because you got to pick the 2 Joseph.
I gotta let my thoroughbreds run, man.
Yes, you got to pick Seals. Seals is a natural wicket taker.
Yeah.
You know.
And I know,
and he swings the ball. He swings the ball.
And I know Graves.
Graves is good enough to be a fourth seamer.
Man.
It's good to be I think the imbalance there, but you had to. Anyway, I got my answer. Adi, you have.
I didn't have Roach, and that is why I'm saying, if you're gonna play 5 quicks, if you will, the reason why you're playing 5 quicks is you know that Bangladesh is susceptible.
Don't like this.
They don't like this.
That's right.
Keep the ball in the chest. Keep the ball in the chest. Don't try with the swinging and all them kind. Keep the ball in the chest. Get them uncomfortable, and you stick in the couple. You bowl it up. You get so we're gonna see it. I think they're gonna do that in the second innings, because I think they see it today. They're gonna do it in the second innings.
Because I think Bangladesh, because I said this before the tournament. I mean the series. Bangladesh they've improved in the seam bowling stocks, and I think Bangladesh missed a trick by leaving out their genuine.
The fast boy, the little boy.
Right?
Yes. They're gonna bring him back at Sabina Park. Watch it.
Of course, they're gonna bring him. But West Indies, but my reservations about them was I know they don't like it short and fast.
Yep.
Yeah.
So therefore, in my view, I come in aggressive at them. The 2 Josephs opening, and we come in head hunting, if you want to use the term. Forward, short leg, and all of them guys close, and you're looking hardly anybody in front of the bat. You're bowling, they're gonna be playing from here.
That's right.
Do that, you know. I mean,
yeah. Good evening, Jason Lewis from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Vincy in the house. Good evening to all of you. Look, I find myself going against the Brotherhood for a brief moment. Because as you all have heard me say on this program, I think India getting too big for their pants.
Yes.
So I was saying, I'm glad, it's quietly to myself. I want hear myself saying that, right? So I'm talking to myself quiet. I'm glad if Australia beat them. Come on, I want the next side here, because that is going against the Brotherhood. But after I see Bumrah let loose I said myself, forget about the Australian people.
He is a handful, boy. He is a handful.
Your thoughts on what has happened in that test match so far?
I mean, it can be very interesting in the second innings, because the meat of the Australian batting lineup is going to have to face the music in the second innings. Australia now winning the match, we know that, but it's how I think those three guys, Marsh, Smith, and Head, the 3 of them, I think their charge is to, in this second innings, is to put down a stake that they're gonna take into the next test match. Because it's funny, I read an article about the preparation, because this is the first test match Australia has played in 8 months, right?
Yes.
But Australia, the setup was so meticulous in their preparation and resting, and for each player, most of them in play Sheffield Shield. Some played some Sheffield Shield before this, right? The captain didn't, and you could clearly see the captain was not himself. He was bowling a lot of bad balls. He wasn't the guy that would hit that spot over and over. Hazelwood was the only one that was the one, right? And all of this planning, and as the article says, Australia were undercooked, meaning these guys were not ready for this, and India blew them away.
With practically a second 11.
Yeah, Mr. Bumrah. Bumrah. Without Bumrah, India won't be in the position they are.
Right.
But remember, Marcel, but you see, the thing is, remember, he's got a very good supporting cast in.
No, I agree. But also, too, India might say, well, you know what, too? You remember they arrested Bumrah against New Zealand,
yes.
Right? So Bumrah come in here rearing to go. And look, the next test, I don't know if India going to send for Shami, because Shami is back fit again. Right? Mohamed Shami.
He's back to full fitness.
Yes. I don't know if they're going to send to bolster their troops with Shami. You know?
Well, Rohit is coming back.
Yes, Rohit is coming back.
Sarfraz is not playing. Sarfraz is injured. Shubman Gill is injured. When Rohit, Sarfraz, and Shubman come back, that's the real batting lineup there.
Yeah, but Rohit going to play.
Who they're going to get rid of?
Who? The guy
Paddy Carr.
Joel
Joel
is going to drop when Rohit come back.
Right. Joel, Paddy
because
Carr.
KL Rahul going to drop back down the order.
Down the order. And of course, neither Ashwin nor Jadeja is in this. Oh God, the embarrassment of riches, eh?
Yeah.
But you know, guys, I know what Basil telling, but they're gonna start. This game gonna be finished by tea time tonight.
Well,
because you know,
here, I'm not saying nay, but I'm saying those three Australian batsmen. I know those guys gonna be thinking, look, we gotta make a stand here.
But you know, Basil, when them 3 wickets will get carried away last night, and they see what the ball when they go there, them playing the real game. Because if you notice also, the wicket is starting to keep low.
Yeah.
And a wicket keeping low with somebody like a Bumrah
is a double whammy.
And then Bumrah, you got the other guy the other end,
Siraj.
It says, and he also does do the same like Bumrah, but now he bowl a little out, and then that cutter rushing him back to your pad. I think the game done because mentally right away they're already beaten mentally. That game is going to be done by tea time tonight. Watch it.
Yeah, quite a match.
Don't even the Australians. They're still tough.
But the Indians got a lot of support in the stands.
Yes.
Australia. A lot of them live there.
Yeah.
They have a sizable population there.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
Yeah, man.
Yes.
Every time India go and play in Australia, last year you see a large section of Indians in the ground. And there's not Indians who travel from India. Indians who live right there in Australia.
Oh, I thought it was traveling. I said, why they're traveling heavy?
No.
They live right there.
And also they got a sizable Pakistani population in Australia also.
And New Zealand.
Yes. India, they got a decent Indian population, because you're seeing how many Indians have played for New Zealand in the last several years.
That's right.
By the way, I see Carl Hooper got appointed.
Oh, yes.
The multicultural ambassador.
Yeah, cultural ambassador there.
Australia.
West Indies sometimes bothers me. And somebody like Carl Hooper, well, you got Carl sitting in Australia.
Well, they claim that it was the cost of bringing Carl back and forth from Australia to this part of the world, etc. was a little too prohibitive. So that's why he's no longer part of our white ball setup.
Anyhow, we are what we are, according to Brother Bob, and that's the way it's going to be. You can't educate I for no equal opportunity. I hope that spirit can return to the governance of our cricket, indeed the governance of our society, because I think we are at a crossroads again. I mean, we have been at the crossroads many times in our history, but I cannot wrap my mind around that all the other cricket playing teams in the world are able to strike a balance between their players making money and committing themselves to play for their country.
Yeah.
And I cannot understand why we West Indians, who have given so much to the world in science, in politics, in literature, in sport, that we can't get this thing right. You know, of all people, we should be able to manage wealth creation and commitment to the society. And you are telling me that Mayors left playing for Barbados to go and play a T10?
I asked the Bajan guys, I said to them, what nonsense y'all going on with it? Oh, I mean, how this guy, y'all give him captaincy and you know he was going to be leaving. This doesn't make no sense.
And that this is a man, you know, you're rooting for him to get back in the West Indies setup.
Yeah, we sure are.
Yeah.
Anyhow, my brothers, it's always a pleasure.
Yeah, man.
Yes, sir.
Same here.
I'll see you all next week.
Yes,
And let's watch tonight. We know that one is finishing tonight, and hopefully we're able to pull this one off against Bangladesh. We'll have to score.
We got them right where we want them.
Yeah. I think that
the only problem is this: the wicket is not wicket could blow a team.
Blow people away. Right.
So I agree with what the bowling coach said. We need to bat and score quickly. And give ourselves enough time to bowl out Bangladesh.
Yes, I think so. I think if we give ourselves at least 4 sessions, you know, if we score quickly tomorrow morning, with a sizable lead, and then give them a 3-something in 4 sessions and go at it. And I think giving them the short ball is the way to go.
Yeah.
Right?
You know one thing, Dr. Hines, as y'all were talking about Brathwaite's technique, I remember we were playing in Sri Lanka, and Bishop and either guy is from India or Sri Lanka was in commentary. And it must have been the first time this guy seen Brathwaite bat. And the guy was incredulous. He turned to Bishop and said, Bish, how can a guy with such poor technique be playing Test cricket? How can a guy? He kept repeating. He was so amazed. How could this guy be playing Test cricket, right? And Bish sheepishly said, "Well, on the flat wickets he'll do well, but you know."
Oh, Bassett Butcher Jr., Dr. Vincent Adams, my brothers, thank you all very much for a very good show. And I'll see you all next week for another edition of West Indies Cricket 101. Same time, same place.
Gonna get you by degrees. Here comes the West Indies. And when you're facing the generals, nearly every ball is a funeral. And when we battle, brother, go and put your men on the boundary line. And if you give we a liquor, that is merely a hiccup. Look, you win the little battle, you lose the war. It's the same result every time. Everybody sing. Here comes the West Indies.